Hello and welcome to Mr. Sleepy Science. I'm happy you found your way here. Maybe you've had a long day, or perhaps you're the type who enjoys ending their evening with something thoughtful, slow, quiet, and curious. If you enjoy drifting off while listening to science, and maybe learning something along the way, you're in the right place. Just relax, breathe easy, and let your mind ease into a slower rhythm. Tonight's journey keeps us close to the ground, to leaves, roots, sunlight, and soil. We're exploring a question that sounds simple, maybe even strange, but it opens doors to something much deeper. We know plants grow. We know they respond. But is that everything? Is there more? Could it be possible that plants can think? Before we dive into these questions, if these calm explorations help you relax, fall asleep, or just bring some peace to your evening, please gently tap the like button and subscribe. It helps other people find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you'd like to share, let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from, or what topics you'd like to learn about next. Now, let's begin. When we think about intelligence, we imagine movement. A fox changing its hunt based on the wind. A dolphin figuring out a puzzle to get fish. Even the tiniest insect moves using sight, smell, and memory. In the animal kingdom, intelligence means action. Decisions made in real time as the world changes around you. But what kind of intelligence could exist without movement? A plant stays anchored from the moment it sprouts. It can't run from a predator, chase a mate, or move toward better light. And yet, over millions of years, plants have spread to nearly every environment on Earth. Deserts, swamps, mountaintops, salt flats, deep shade, forest canopy. They do this without a nervous system, without a brain, without anything we'd normally call thought. And yet they survive. They adapt. They make decisions, often in ways that look like the same trade-offs animals have to make. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a scientific mystery, one that researchers are only now starting to solve. In fact, some scientists are beginning to believe we may have gotten plants entirely wrong. That hidden in their quiet biology is a kind of intelligence we've just never learned to recognize. Part of the problem is that plant behavior happens at a pace we're not used to watching. Where an animal might respond in seconds, a plant might take hours, days, even weeks. But slowness isn't the same as doing nothing. It might just mean we've been looking at the wrong kind of clock. Some plants can sense up to 20 different environmental signals at the same time. Light, moisture, gravity, touch, chemical gradients, nutrient levels, even changes in the presence of nearby organisms. They don't just detect these things passively, they combine them. They weigh them against each other and they act. When roots branch toward a buried water source, they're not just growing randomly. They're responding to one signal and ignoring others. When a leaf tilts slightly to avoid the shadow of its neighbor, or when a seed waits to sprout until the surrounding chemicals suggest safer conditions, that's more than just reflex. It's conditional. It's selective. It's based on context. And context is one of the key signs of intelligence. In recent years, plant scientists have started using words that once seemed impossible in botany: decision-making, anticipation, even learning. These aren't metaphors. They describe real, testable events, behaviors that change not just with conditions, but with history. In some cases, plants seem to change future responses based on past events, which means they may remember. Take the example of Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant. When touched, its leaves fold inward quickly, a defense thought to stop herbivores or prevent water loss. But in lab studies, when scientists repeatedly dropped water onto these leaves from a fixed height, the plant eventually stopped closing. It had learned that the touch was harmless. When a new touch was introduced, like shaking, the folding came back. This wasn't fatigue. It was selective. The most amazing part, the response lasted for weeks, even after the plants had been moved to new places. No nervous system, no neurons, yet something in the plant had saved the experience and changed its behavior because of it. What other abilities might be hidden in leaf and root? That's what researchers around the world are now trying to find out. Not just how plants react, but how they process information. Because the more we look, the more it seems that plants are not just responsive, they are interpretive. They weigh inputs, they filter noise, and in some cases, they seem to predict what comes next. Take the case of climbing bean plants. In one experiment, scientists exposed them to rotating light sources, lights that moved in a predictable pattern across a surface. At first, the plant grew slowly toward the current position of the light, as expected. But over time, something changed. The plant started adjusting not to where the light was, but to where it would be. It changed direction just before the light moved, anticipating the next part of its path. This kind of predictive growth suggests a form of expectation. Not in the conscious way we think of with animals, but something subtler, a model of repeated experience built into behavior. It's the plant version of predicting the weather by remembering yesterday's patterns. And while this may not be thinking in any traditional sense, it raises the possibility that plants track not just what is, but what might be. But that wasn't the only example. In another experiment, researchers exposed Arabidopsis thaliana, a small flowering plant often used in genetic studies, to cold stress at the same time each day. After just a few cycles, something remarkable happened. The plants began turning on their cold response genes before the cold even arrived, as if predicting it. This wasn't reflex. It was recall. The plants had remembered the rhythm of their environment, the timing of discomfort, and adjusted their internal chemistry to prepare. No brain, no neurons, just gene expression, cellular signaling, and distributed memory. That simple difference between reaction and prediction is at the center of modern research into plant intelligence. It's one thing for a seedling to lean toward sunlight. That's phototropism, a mechanical response to light, deeply studied and well understood. But it's another thing entirely for a plant to adjust its behavior based on a pattern that hasn't happened yet. That's not just sensitivity. It's close to inference. And inference, even in its simplest form, is a cognitive act. It means holding onto past input, comparing it to current input, and using both to shape future response. That might sound familiar because it's how animals learn, not through simple reaction, by building models of their world and updating them with new information. And remarkably, plants without neurons, without synapses, without the electrical machinery we think intelligence needs, seem capable of something similar. But if there's no brain, where is this happening? Where inside the soft tissue of a stem or leaf does this predictive ability exist? To answer that, we have to change how we think about cognition. In animals, thought is centralized. The brain processes input, sends commands, and stores memories in specific, mappable regions. But in plants, there is no central command. No place where signals are gathered, sorted, and acted on. Instead, their processing, if we can call it that, is distributed. Each cell is a part of it. Across the plant body, networks of cells exchange chemical and electrical signals. These signals aren't just local. They can travel from roots to leaves and back again, changing behavior across the whole organism. In some cases, a stimulus applied to one leaf causes changes in others, even if those parts are never touched. That kind of internal coordination is, in many ways, required for decision-making. It suggests integration, not just sensing but evaluating, not just reacting but choosing. And in some cases, those choices seem to follow a kind of logic. Researchers have found that plants can weigh competing options and make trade-offs based on risk and reward. Consider Arabidopsis thaliana again. When exposed to salt in the soil, something that can damage roots and block water absorption, the plant doesn't always pull back or stop growing entirely. Instead, it shifts its root development in a calculated way. If nutrients are high enough to balance out the damage risk, the roots may keep expanding into salty zones. But if the reward is low, they hold back. This is not simple reflex. It's a context-dependent response that changes with external conditions and internal needs. The plant appears to evaluate, to combine multiple types of information and respond accordingly, to make a kind of cost-benefit analysis, all without a single neuron. This leads to a bold question. If a plant can weigh options and pick a path forward, does that count as intelligence? Or do we just lack better words for what it's doing? The deeper we look, the more the boundaries start to blur. Prediction, memory, decision-making, integration of competing signals. These are not just mechanical traits. They're signs of something more. And while plants may never think like animals, the idea that they don't think at all is starting to feel more and more outdated. But intelligence, if we're going to use that word, isn't just about sensing or decision-making. It's also about communication, about sharing information between parts of a system, or even between completely separate organisms. And in plants, communication is turning out to be far more widespread and far more complex than we ever thought possible. Some of it happens underground, not through sound or sight, but through chemicals passed from root to root, through signaling molecules, mycorrhizal fungi, and water pressure changes in the soil. A plant going through drought, for example, may signal its neighbors, who then start closing their stomata in preparation for water stress, even before they experience it themselves. This kind of advanced coordination is startling. It suggests that plants don't just manage their own internal sometimes change their behavior based on information they receive from others. These underground interactions can cover large distances. In forests, for example, mycorrhizal networks, the partnerships between fungi and plant roots, can link entire communities of trees together. Researchers have documented resource sharing through these networks, carbon passed from bigger trees to smaller ones, or nutrients moved around during times of stress. In some cases, when a tree is injured or attacked, it sends chemical signals through the mycorrhizal web, prompting nearby trees to strengthen their own defenses, increasing production of protective compounds before the threat even reaches them. It's a kind of early warning system, a botanical version of lookout, something's coming. But it's not just fungi or roots. Plants also release volatile organic compounds, airborne messages, when damaged by herbivores. These compounds can be picked up by neighboring plants, which then increase their production of defensive chemicals like tannins or alkaloids. The plants are, in effect, listening to one another, picking up signs of trouble carried on the breeze. This kind of communication, chemical, electrical, even acoustic, challenges the old assumption that plants are isolated, self-contained organisms. Instead, they appear embedded in complex, information-rich networks. A tree doesn't just grow alone. It exists within a social system, one that responds, adapts, and sometimes cooperates. Some researchers have even started exploring whether certain species show a kind of kin recognition, responding differently to relatives than to unrelated neighbors. In a series of experiments with sea rocket plants, for example, individuals grown beside close kin were less aggressive in root competition than those grown next to strangers. The plants used resources differently, favoring coexistence over conflict. This suggests not just awareness of one's environment, but a discriminating awareness, a capacity to assess, categorize, and respond based on identity. It's not memory in the traditional sense, but it points to something functionally similar, a mechanism by which plants modify their behavior based on who's around them and what they've experienced before. Of course, in animals, such selective behavior is often supported by neural mechanisms, cognitive maps, sensory integration centers, decision hierarchies. But in plants, the tools are different. Signals travel more slowly. Communication happens molecule by molecule through vascular tissues and cell walls. And yet, the outcome can still look like choice. In some cases, these choices emerge not from individual plants, but from groups acting together. Collective intelligence on a botanical scale. One of the most striking examples of this is the behavior of desert shrubs that coordinate flowering based on rainfall. It's not just one plant responding to water, but a whole population coordinating timing, making sure that pollinators arrive when they're most needed. The signal is distributed, the behavior collective. And in the forest, this idea becomes even more complex. Through root grafts, overlapping canopies, and shared mycorrhizal networks, entire communities of plants seem to adjust their behavior based on shared information. It's not just cooperation, it's interdependence. The success of one tree may depend on the health and choices of many others. These networks, often called the wood wide web, are formed by underground fungi that connect the roots of multiple plants. Through them, trees can exchange carbon, nitrogen, and signaling molecules. A shaded sapling might receive sugars from a sunlit neighbor. A pest-infested tree can send out chemical alerts, prompting nearby plants to strengthen their defenses in advance. This isn't random spreading. It's targeted, responsive, and often reciprocal. Some species even appear to distinguish kin from strangers, preferentially sharing resources with genetically related individuals. Others change their growth depending on who is nearby, extending roots aggressively toward competitors or softening growth near siblings. In these relationships, we start to see another layer of what might be called awareness, not in the sense of subjective experience. We're not suggesting that a tree knows in the way we know, but it perceives. It distinguishes. It modifies its behavior not just for itself, but in relation to others. And it's not just fungal-mediated cooperation. Some plants form tightly integrated partnerships with ants, offering nectar or shelter in exchange for protection. Others use volatile chemicals to listen in on nearby species, tuning in to stress signals or blooming cues to better time their own behavior. Even parasitic plants like cuscuta or dodder vine can smell out preferred hosts by detecting chemical signatures before making physical contact. These examples don't fit easily into our animal-centric models of cognition. There are no brains, no synapses, no faces or movement. But there is complexity. There is choice. There is information being gathered, interpreted, and used in ways that shape the plant's survival. And remarkably, some of this communication even crosses species boundaries in subtler, more mysterious ways. In certain conditions, injured plants release airborne cues that can trigger responses, not only in nearby plants of the same species, but in entirely different ones. A damaged tomato, for instance, might warn a nearby bean plant. The signal isn't linguistic, it's chemical, but it still carries meaning. Danger is near. The implication is striking. Meaning can exist without language. Information can be shared without a nervous system. These signals don't travel through wires or thoughts. They move through molecules, diffusion, and the shared atmosphere of a living community. And yet the effect is similar. A message is sent. A message is received. Behavior changes as a result. And the language of plants is far more sophisticated than we once thought. Some species can tailor their chemical output depending on the kind of threat they're facing. If an insect chews on a leaf, the plant may release compounds that attract that insect's specific predator. But if a pathogen attacks instead, the chemical profile shifts, activating defenses more suited to infection. This isn't just reaction, it's discrimination. The plant can tell what kind of attack it's under and adjust its response accordingly. That level of selectivity demands nuance. It requires some form of recognition, a way to process incoming stimuli and determine their meaning. And in plant biology, that That means decoding complex molecular cues through networks of receptors, signal cascades, and hormonal regulators. Each leaf, each root tip, each patch of bark is part of the system, a node in a distributed web of information that functions not unlike a diffuse brain. Some scientists have even started to compare this system to basic forms of computation. Not in the digital sense, of course. There are no bits, no binary, no processors. But computation at its core is the transformation of input into output according to a set of rules. In plants, those rules are biochemical. Environmental cues like light, gravity, or herbivore saliva trigger precise chains of molecular reactions that ultimately change the organism's behavior. And just as a computer can perform logic operations, if this, then that, so can a plant. Some responses only happen when multiple conditions are met. For instance, certain defense genes are activated not by light alone or stress alone, but by the combination of both. That's a form of conditional reasoning embedded not in circuitry, but in the very structure of plant physiology. It's slow, it's chemical, but it's structured, logical, functional. What's more, these logic circuits are not fixed. Plants can reconfigure their responses based on past experiences. Stress primes certain pathways, making future responses faster or more intense. In this way, plants show a kind of learning, not by changing behavior directly, but by changing the threshold at which behaviors are triggered. This ability to recalibrate sensitivity, to tune one's inner workings to better match the world outside, is yet another marker of intelligence in living systems. One of the most interesting aspects of plant behavior is the way these responses scale. A single leaf might respond to a wound by producing defense compounds, but the same signal can travel cell to cell, tissue to tissue, triggering defenses in distant leaves that weren't directly harmed. This system-wide signaling is often carried by electrical impulses or waves of calcium ions, reminiscent of how neurons communicate in animals. But unlike neurons, plant cells are not specialized only for signaling. They are also metabolic workhorses, absorbing light, managing water, making chemicals. Their dual function adds complexity to the system. A plant's internal network is both its communication grid and its engine for life. And still, within this complexity, the signals move with purpose. Some signals move faster than others, as quickly as a few millimeters per second, and they follow distinct paths depending on the type of stress. Herbivory, for instance, triggers one pattern, drought another. It's not just that the plant sends a message. It chooses how to send it, where to send it, and which form the message should take. That kind of specificity hints at something more than reflex. It hints at internal representation. Representation in cognitive science refers to the ability of a system to encode the state of the world, to hold a model of external reality within itself. When a plant differentiates between light quality, soil composition, or nearby competitors, and changes its growth based on those distinctions, it may be engaging in a form of representation, a biochemical map of what's out there, drawn not in thoughts, but in chemistry. This idea that plants build internal representations of the world is still controversial, but it's gaining support, especially as we discover more examples of sophisticated decision-making. One study, corn seedlings were grown near a mechanical fan that came before a light source. Over time, the plants started to associate the fan with incoming light, bending toward the airflow even when the light was held back. This kind of associative learning, forming a predictive link between two unrelated stimuli, is a foundational concept in animal psychology. It's the basis of Pavlov's dogs. And here it was in a plant. Skeptics have questioned whether these responses meet the bar for learning. But from a behavioral standpoint, the criteria are clear. If an organism changes its future behavior based on the pairing of past experiences, it has learned something. And in this case, the corn seedlings behaved in a way that suggested memory, anticipation, and associative processing, all without a nervous system. So, how does this work? The answer lies again in the language of cells. Plants regulate behavior through a complex network of hormone signals, electrical impulses, and gene expression changes. Each pathway is tuned to specific environmental inputs: light, pressure, temperature, nutrients, and can modify the plant's growth or chemical output accordingly. Over time, the plant's history becomes encoded in its physiology. This kind of encoding, storing environmental patterns in physical form, is one of the most fascinating aspects of plant behavior. It allows for what some researchers have called somatic memory. The idea that a plant's body carries its experiences not in a centralized storehouse like a brain, but as a distributed history across its tissues. For example, repeated exposure to drought can cause some plants to preemptively adjust their stomatal behavior, those tiny openings on leaves that regulate gas exchange. Even when moisture returns, the altered stomatal pattern can persist, as if the plant remembers the risk and hedges its bets. This is not just passive carryover. It's an active, regulated shift, often involving epigenetic changes, where gene expression is modified in response to stress, and those changes remain long after the stimulus is gone. In some cases, these adjustments can even be passed to the next generation. Seeds from stressed plants sometimes inherit altered response profiles, a kind of biological foresight where the offspring are pre-equipped to handle conditions their parent endured. It's not Lamarckian evolution. It's not DNA mutation. It's a subtler, more flexible mechanism: transgenerational memory through chromatin modification, small RNAs, and inherited hormonal states. This transgenerational transfer of experience has led some scientists to explore the idea that plants possess a form of environmental inheritance, not in the genetic sense of traits encoded by base pairs, but as a kind of ecological intelligence passed along through physiological imprinting. In essence, a plant's behavior is shaped not only by its genome and its immediate surroundings, but by the lived experiences of its ancestors. If a lineage has endured repeated cycles of drought, salinity, or pest pressure, its descendants may grow with a kind of baked insensitivity to those pressures, altering root depth, growth timing, or chemical defenses accordingly. These aren't guesses. They are inherited strategies crafted not by DNA alone, but by history. Such inheritance complicates how we draw lines between instinct and learning. In animals, learned behavior is typically seen as individual, acquired through direct experience. But in plants, the borders blur. When information persists across generations without altering the genome, it challenges traditional evolutionary models and raises new questions about how intelligence might be defined in systems without consciousness. This also invites us to consider a different kind of intelligence, not as something housed in a single mind, but as something that emerges collectively, not just across cells, but across organisms. In forest ecosystems, for example, certain species of trees are connected below ground by vast mycorrhizal networks, symbiotic associations between plant roots and fungi. These networks are not just passive conduits for nutrients. They can transmit chemical signals between trees, alerting neighbors to drought, disease, or insect attack. In some experiments, when a tree is injured, say by a pest infestation, it releases warning compounds into the shared network. Nearby trees, even those of different species, respond by ramping up their own chemical defenses before being attacked. This kind of coordinated response, spanning dozens or even hundreds of individual organisms, is sometimes nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. But what's truly remarkable isn't just the communication, it's the selectivity. Studies suggest that trees may prioritize their kin or those they share mutual benefit with. In some cases, they even seem to allocate more carbon or nutrients to their own offspring than to unrelated neighbors. It's a subtle but striking sign that even in plants, cooperation and competition may be negotiated, not blindly, but with context-aware rules. Even the dynamics of this underground communication are more sophisticated than they first appear. Chemical messages sent through root and fungal networks don't just travel passively. They move along concentration gradients, are selectively absorbed or ignored by recipient cells, and in some cases seem to be adjusted in strength depending on the sender's condition. A tree in distress might emit a stronger signal, prompting a more urgent response in its neighbors. In that sense, the volume of the message can be turned up or down depending on the situation. And the receiving plants don't all respond the same way. Different species, and even individuals of the same species, may interpret the same chemical cue differently, increasing defenses, altering growth, or changing their root architecture in subtly distinct patterns. This suggests that the messages aren't universally hard-coded instructions, but open to interpretation, filtered through the physiology and prior experiences of each listener. This layered responsiveness adds another dimension to our understanding of plant intelligence. Interpretation is not just possible, it's variable. And this variability may serve an ecological purpose. In a mixed species forest, the same signal might trigger different protective behaviors in different plants. A volatile compound released by a damaged willow could cause a nearby alder to boost its tannin production, while prompting a spruce to alter the timing of its bud opening. Each response is tuned not just to the message, but to the biology of the receiver, and perhaps even the broader ecological context. Researchers have also discovered that some of these responses depend on past exposure. A plant that has previously encountered a particular threat may respond more quickly or strongly to the signal than one that hasn't. In effect, it has been primed. This phenomenon, known as induced resistance, means that plant defenses can operate on a kind of immunological memory, not just reacting to stimuli, but storing and modifying those reactions over time. This brings us closer to a fascinating frontier: the idea that plant communication is not just functional, but adaptive. It's not static. It evolves over time. Signaling systems can become more efficient, more specific, and more attuned to the dynamics of the local ecosystem. And if communication can adapt, then in a very real sense, plants are shaping the languages they speak. In some species, this refinement goes even deeper. Take sagebrush, for instance. When damaged by herbivores, these plants emit a complex blend of volatile chemicals. But what's remarkable is that the composition of those chemicals can vary depending on the identity of nearby plants. A sagebrush surrounded by kin releases a slightly different mix of compounds than one surrounded by strangers, suggesting not only kin recognition, but the potential for customized messages. Even more striking, the receiving plants, especially if they're genetically related, respond more strongly to those customized signals. It's a kind of dialect, not universal, but familial. Plants may be developing localized chemical languages tailored to their community, improving both the efficiency and relevance of their warnings. This raises an extraordinary possibility that plants, through evolution and ecological feedback, have developed systems of information exchange that are both context-sensitive and flexible. Systems that transmit not just raw data, but meaning. The message changes with the sender, the receiver, and the history between them. But what does it mean to share meaning without a mind? In cognitive science, meaning is often linked to representation, to the idea that a system can encode something about the world and act on it. In humans and animals, this typically involves symbols, language, or neural patterns. But in plants, meaning may reside in chemistry, in the specific blend of terpenes, alkaloids, or phenols sent out into the air. These aren't just stress responses. They're actionable signals. A certain compound might tell nearby plants to thicken their cuticle. Another might trigger faster root growth. The message is in the molecule, and that molecule doesn't exist in isolation. It's read through receptors, proteins embedded in plant membranes that bind to specific compounds and set off cascades of internal responses. These cascades often involve hormones like jasmonic acid or salicylic acid, chemical messengers that relay the signal inward, tuning gene expression and altering physiology. The message is passed, received, interpreted, and remembered, all without a single thought. This kind of chemical literacy, the ability to sense, decode, and act upon volatile signals, is widespread. Corn, tobacco, tomato, acacia, sage, and dozens of other species have all demonstrated airborne communication. The air between plants is not empty. It's a medium for conversation, slow, silent, and molecular. And like any conversation, the context matters. The same molecule can have different effects depending on who receives it. A volatile cue from a damaged tomato plant might trigger defensive responses in another tomato, but a different species might ignore it entirely. In some cases, even the same species will respond differently depending on past exposure. If a plant has already encountered a certain herbivore, it may become primed to react faster the next time, a form of chemical conditioning that sharpens the meaning of the signal with experience. This sensitivity isn't random. It's built into the architecture of the plant's signaling pathways, networks of receptors, enzymes, and transcription factors that interact like logic gates. Some pathways amplify each other. Others inhibit. Some only activate when multiple cues are present, like a chemical signature plus a mechanical wound. In this way, plants don't just detect messages, they interpret them. They discriminate. They apply context. And remarkably, this interpretation can even extend to eavesdropping, the unsolicited monitoring of other species' signals. In one set of experiments, researchers found that sagebrush plants released warning volatiles after mechanical damage, and that nearby tobacco plants, an entirely different species, responded by boosting their own defenses. The tobacco wasn't the intended recipient, but it had learned to associate those cues with danger. It had learned to listen. Some plants take this even further, not just listening to others, but modifying their own signals based on who's around. Competitive environments, for instance, certain species emit volatile compounds that inhibit germination in nearby seeds. This isn't mere defense, it's preemptive strategy. If resources are limited, preventing the success of neighbors becomes a form of ecological control. But intriguingly, this suppression can be fine-tuned. If the nearby seeds are close relatives, the chemical output may lessen, suggesting a form of kin-selective behavior that shapes not just growth, but community structure. This interplay of signal and response creates a dynamic field of chemical negotiation. Plants aren't locked in isolated monologues. They're part of a biochemical discourse full of cues, counter-cues, alliances, and deterrents. In weedy pastures and dense forests alike, these interactions can influence which plants dominate, which cooperate, and which wither in the shade of more strategic neighbors. Even parasitic species have learned to exploit this chemical language. The daughter vine, Cuscuta, doesn't photosynthesize. It must latch onto a host. But how does it choose? Studies show that daughter seedlings can detect volatile signatures from different potential hosts, bending towards some and avoiding others. Given a choice between tomato and wheat, for instance, daughter often moves toward the more nutritious tomato. It's not just growing blindly. It's choosing. It's selecting a target based on chemical information, a decision with consequences for survival. And even once attached, parasitic plants continue to monitor their hosts, adjusting their own metabolism, growth rate, and even reproductive timing based on the physiological status of the organism they're feeding from. If the host is struggling, the parasite may reduce its drain to avoid killing it. If the host is thriving, it might increase uptake. It's a balancing act, a kind of economic behavior governed not by intent, but by feedback and modulation. What makes these interactions even more striking is how many occur simultaneously. A single plant might be processing dozens of signals at once, assessing nutrient gradients, water availability, herbivore pressure, and the identity of nearby neighbors. These inputs don't exist in isolation. They're layered, overlapping, often conflicting, and yet the plant responds with apparent coherence. It doesn't collapse under the noise. It filters. It prioritizes. This capacity to integrate, to sift through complexity, and produce a coordinated response is part of what's led some researchers to argue for a broader definition of cognition. Not cognition as consciousness, not as internal experience, but as a system's ability to acquire, store, process, and use information to guide adaptive behavior. In this light, a plant's distributed chemical network, with its capacity for anticipation, discrimination, memory, and even learning, begins to look less like a passive structure and more like a quiet, leafy mind. If we accept this broader framework, that intelligence can emerge from the dynamics of a system rather than being confined to brains. Then the plant world becomes not just fascinating, but philosophically challenging. It forces us to revisit long-held assumptions about what it means to know, to perceive, to act with purpose. And it invites new questions about where the boundaries of cognition truly lie. For instance, some recent studies have shown that plants can exhibit forms of electrical habituation. When repeatedly exposed to non-harmful stimuli like mild vibrations or light touches, the amplitude of their electrical responses diminishes over time. They stop reacting as strongly. This kind of neural-like attenuation is considered a primitive form of learning in animals. In plants, it's governed by calcium signaling, ion channel activity, and shifts in membrane potential. And crucially, it's not just fatigue. When a new stimulus is introduced, the electrical response returns, indicating selectivity, not exhaustion. Other researchers have begun exploring how plants might listen for sounds. In controlled experiments, roots have been shown to grow toward the source of specific acoustic vibrations, such as the gurgling of water in a pipe. The idea that a plant can detect and respond to sound, even without ears or a nervous system, is startling. But the data suggest real sensitivity to pressure waves. Tiny mechanoreceptors in the root cells appear to convert vibrations into electrochemical signals, allowing the plant to use sound as yet another cue in its growing environment. And sound is only one frontier. Plants are also responsive to electromagnetic signals, in ways we are only beginning to understand. Some studies suggest that plants can detect weak magnetic fields, such as those generated by Earth's geomagnetic field, and subtly alter their growth direction or cellular processes in response. The mechanisms are still debated, but hypotheses include magnetically sensitive proteins like cryptochromes, which are known to mediate light responses and might also serve as a biological compass. If this turns out to be true, it would mean that plants navigate not only through soil and light, but through invisible fields of force that span the planet. This multimodal sensitivity to light, gravity, water, chemicals, sound, and perhaps magnetism gives plants an extraordinary situational awareness. But what's more remarkable is how they integrate these inputs. Plants don't just respond to one signal at a time. They synthesize them. They prioritize. If water is scarce but light is abundant, they may favor root over leaf growth. If temperature and light signal opposing cues, the plant makes a choice. These aren't automatic, pre-programmed responses. They are weighted, conditional behaviors. The plant is weighing variables, choosing among strategies, and altering its internal state accordingly. Some of this coordination relies on plant hormones, chemical messengers like auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Each has multiple effects depending on concentration, location, and context. Auxin, for example, promotes cell elongation in stems, but inhibits growth in roots. It flows directionally through tissues, creating gradients that shape how a plant bends, branches, and even forms new organs. In this way, hormonal signaling in plants operates not unlike neurotransmission in animals, except slower and without synapses. Signals diffuse across space, are picked up by receptors, and trigger cascades of genetic and biochemical changes. Some researchers now believe that this collective responsiveness, these massive webs of shared chemical cues and resource flow, may represent more than just a communication network. It may constitute a form of distributed intelligence. Not a brain, not even a mind, but a system that together holds and acts upon information about the environment in ways that no individual plant could on its own. This idea isn't just philosophical, it's testable. When parts of these networks are disrupted, for instance, when the mycorrhizal fungi are removed, the ability of plants to anticipate stress, coordinate flowering, or share nutrients declines. The network itself appears to be a functional unit. Damage the system, and the intelligence fades. This challenges our idea of what it means to be an individual. In the plant world, identity is more porous. Boundaries blur. A tree is not just a tree. It's a node in a living web, shaped by and shaping the behavior of others. Its memories may be carried in hormones, in root tips, in fungi. Its choices may be influenced by the health, age, and species of its neighbors. In a sense, the forest thinks collectively, processing information across a distributed network that spans acres, even miles. And this distributed intelligence may extend beyond just resource sharing or defense. Some research suggests that older trees often called mother trees, play a central role in forest networks. They appear to act as hubs, channeling resources to younger saplings, especially their own offspring. When these hub trees are removed, the resilience of the entire network decreases. Seedling survival drops, diversity declines. The forest as a system becomes less robust. This isn't just ecology, it's architecture. It's a form of social organization where experience, age, and connectivity shape the flow of information and resources. And it suggests that intelligence in the plant world may not reside in individuals at all, but in the relationships between them. Consider what this means. A forest isn't a collection of independent trees competing for light and water. It's a community, a living network where information flows, resources are shared, and decisions, if we can call them that, are made collectively. The forest responds to threats, adapts to change, and maintains balance, not through a central brain, but through the interactions of thousands of organisms linked by chemistry, fungi, and root. This kind of intelligence, emergent and distributed, challenges everything we thought we knew about cognition. It suggests that thinking, or something like it, can happen without a thinker. That awareness can exist without a self. That memory can be stored not in neurons, but in the tissue, soil, and air of a living system. And if this is true for forests, might it be true elsewhere? Could entire ecosystems, wetlands, grasslands, coral reefs, be processing information in ways we've never recognized? Could the boundary between organism and environment be less fixed than we imagined? These are not just abstract questions. They have practical implications. If plants communicate, if they remember, if they cooperate and compete in ways that shape their survival, then how we treat them matters in new ways. Clearing a forest isn't just removing trees. It's dismantling a network, erasing a history, silencing a conversation that may have been happening for centuries. And if plants can learn, if they can adapt based on experience, then how we grow them, how we cultivate, harvest, and interact with them might shape not just their growth, but their behavior. Agriculture, forestry, conservation, all of these fields may need to be reimagined in light of what we're learning about plant intelligence. But beyond the practical, there's something deeper here. A shift in perspective. For most of human history, we've seen plants as background, as resources, as decoration. Beautiful, useful, but passive. Alive, but not aware. Growing, but not thinking. But the more we learn, the harder that view becomes to maintain. Plants sense. They respond. They remember. They communicate. They make decisions. They adapt. They cooperate. They compete. They anticipate. They learn. They may not have minds in the way we do. They may not experience the world the way we experience it. But they are not inert. They are not simple. They are not passive. They are participants in a vast, ancient, ongoing conversation, one that unfolds in chemistry and time, in root and leaf, in soil and air. A conversation we're only just beginning to hear. And perhaps, in learning to listen, we might discover something not just about plants, but about intelligence itself, about what it means to know, to respond, to survive, about the many forms awareness might take, and the many ways a living system can navigate the world. Because if a tree can remember a drought, if a root can choose a path, if a leaf can warn its neighbor, then maybe intelligence isn't a single thing confined to brains and neurons. Maybe it's a spectrum, a continuum, a quality that emerges wherever information meets life. And maybe, just maybe, the quiet, patient intelligence of plants has been here all along, waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to slow down, to observe, to ask the right questions. So as you drift off tonight, think about the plants around you, the tree outside your window, the grass beneath your feet, the forest on the horizon. They're not just growing, they're sensing, responding, communicating. In their own way, in their own time, they're thinking. And perhaps in recognizing that, we take one step closer to understanding the vast, interconnected web of life that we're all part of. Not above it, not separate from it, but woven into it, as much a part of the conversation as the roots beneath the soil and the leaves rustling in the wind. Thank you for joining me tonight on Mr. Sleepy Science. I hope this journey into the quiet world of plant intelligence brought you some calm, some curiosity, and maybe a new way of seeing the green world around you. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And as always, sleep well and dream deeply.